All right, all right. You are listening to Tone Duncan, and this is the Truth Seekrz. I want to say hello once again. Hope everyone is having an amazing time, enjoying your family, enjoying your food, and enjoying your friends. Start off today by talking about one of the most amazing events that happens every year in our backyard, and we never the love or the attention for how beautiful it is. I am talking about our chosen few. Used to be a picnic, used to be a free little jam session, but now it is one of the biggest music festivals in the Chicagoland area. And the beauty of it is that it is almost predominantly all black. Now, I will say that this year I saw that we had more than just our people. And it was cool to see, because when you see white people in a predominantly black environment, hosted, not just consumed, but hosted by black people, and they feel comfortable, tells you that we are more than just the headlines on your scare tactic news. See, sensationalist media has made it almost ubiquitous that if you show me a black person, I'm going to show you some violence, or I'm going to show you some crime, or I'm going to show you a woe is me story where you're supposed to sympathize, empathize, and wish you could do something to help them, even though you will never do anything to change that issue in their community. I am going to talk to you guys about one of the most awesome opportunities that we had as blacks in Chicago, and that is to go to an event that is hosted, directed, designed, and employed by Africans here in the Chicagoland area. And I apologize, you guys know me. I will say that we are Africans, even though a lot of us don't want to accept our heritage. We'd rather be black. And I want to remind you that it was a time you didn't even want to be black. There was a time calling you black meant the worst of the worst, because that meant you was opposite of white. No, you were okay with being brown. You were okay with being Afro, but you didn't want to be black until one day James Brown said, "Say it loud." Today, I want to talk to you guys about one of the most amazing situations, and that was 42,000 blacks in one event. 42,000 on the south side of Chicago at a music festival. Well, here's the kicker. There was no violence, no gunshots, no babies crying, no mamas wondering why, no dudes running and ducking. It was beautiful. See, you had to go to know what I'm talking about. And I had the privilege and the personal joy of going both Saturday and Sunday. And I realized right then that there was no greater feeling of self-pride, happiness, and joy than taking part in that amazing annual event. I hope next year you guys get a chance to get out there and enjoy such an amazing event. It's on the south side of Chicago, 63rd and Hayes. You got to try it out. You got to check it out. I want to, first and foremost, before I get any further, give a wonderful shout out to my lovely wife, who has always been on my side. You know, black love is real, y'all. I've been married for what will be 23 years in August. And I know a lot of us have had a hard time rationalizing the possibility of black love in America. Now, I can't guarantee that you will ever have what I have, but I will guarantee that I had no idea that I could have it before I was blessed to partake and be a meaningful part of it. So I want to throw that shout out to my beautiful wife and to my children who listen, because what I talk about, I'm not ashamed to have my children, your children, or any child listen to, because it has every single thing to do with who we are and where we need to go. You guys, when we listen and allow the media to dictate who we are, you have to take a second and think about it. I mean, think. Here's the deal. Okay. So if you are scared to go on the South Side, you scared to go in a community that's not your community because of the amount of rampant violence that you hear about on a continual basis, what does that say about how influenced you are by the things you hear and the things you read about and the things you watch? It tells you. Now, why do I bring this up? I bring this up because there was one thing that you need to know about that music festival. That music festival played old school R&B, old school house music, played music that was not perpetuating, was not endorsing, condoning, or celebrating black on black violence. And you wonder why there was no violence. You know, when I was dancing on the lawn and enjoying myself, and check it, your boy Tone Duncan can get down, the first thing I thought about is when, black people, when is the last time you smiled when you was dancing? Not laughed at how you was doing the fool or laughed at something crazy you were trying to do, but laughed with an inner joy of celebration because you were loving the moment and enjoying the people you were around. See, a lot of people don't understand this, but music, as Bob Marley would say, is vibrations. But see, Bob Marley was trying to put you up on game. See, a lot of the Egyptologists, they're controlled by alternative forces. But many of the anthropological scholars will tell you that one of the primary reasons for the pyramids were because they encased an opportunity to maintain particular levels of vibration, because they learned that it was the sounds, the vibrations that heal. Vibrations. Many of you will find out later on that it was those same vibrations that allowed us to move great masses of stone that we call the megaliths. But, you know, we'll get into that another day. Vibrations create a healing, create a rejuvenation of one's spirit. See, you have to go back to our history. What do we Africans always do when we have a time of festivity, a time of coming together? We sing, we shout, we dance, we move. This is us. And to be able to do it carefree, family, carefree, without worry of a gun, without worry of a danger, was something that words cannot articulate. So I give a major shout out to the chosen few. And I could name them all, but it doesn't matter. Check out the Chosen Few Music Festival. Get on board, because this is beauty, true beauty. So after those 2 days, man, I was spent. Okay, I mean, I was really, really spent. And I just wanted to relax. It was over for me. That was my holiday. Now I know a lot of us say, well, the holiday hadn't started yet. And that's the primary reason why I'm talking to you guys today. A lot of us celebrate the 4th of July for different reasons. Because my listening audience isn't all black. There's a few of us that celebrate the 4th of July because it was your forefathers that got their liberation through a revolution, and they won. And because they fought, shed blood, died, and won, they have the inalienable right to celebrate that commemorative day on the 4th of July every year. Independence from the mightiest empire the world had ever known. You know, they said the sun never sets on the kingdom of Britain. There's always a sunny day somewhere. But yet, this little group of pilgrims and their constituents were able to stave off this mighty oppressor like David and Goliath. And you better believe they had their Bibles out with them as they endeavored to face their enemy. They endeavored to face their greatest fear. You know, Britain didn't lose wars. They didn't run out of assets. They had all they needed to wage war in a destructive and violent way. Ask the Irish, ask the Scots, ask the Indians. And I don't mean those who were in America before it was America. I mean those who were in India before it was colonized by Britain. Ask the Africans way, way on the other side of the continent. Britain was a powerful force. You guys, here's how simple it is. They weren't scared. They weren't scared at all. They fought, they died, and they won. And that's what independence is. Some of us celebrate the 4th of July, but I question, what exactly, as Black people, are you celebrating? Are you independent? Do you think you're independent? Well, let me ask you a different question. Do you know what independent means? See, independence means to be independent. And that's a real word. So we're going to go over that. We're going to talk about this real quick. See, when you're independent, that means that you are not influenced or controlled by others. See, that means in a matter of opinions, in a matter of your conduct, your thinking, or acting, because now you are for oneself. You're an independent person. You're an independent nation. See, and this is why they celebrate, because they no longer had anyone to tell them what they had to do. Now, as Africans living in America, who at one particular time, for political reasons that we need not get into right this second, we were afforded our emancipation. And for that reason, we consider ourselves part of the citizenry of America. Shout out to Divinity. She's putting out that work right there. I'm loving what you're saying. And I am going to comment on that because we know for a fact that when you are independent in America, that means that you hold sway in the decision-making process, and knowing in your heart that every decision that's being made is for the benefit of you as a particular group of citizens in your country. See, what we sometimes forget is that in order for you to be independent, you cannot be subject to another's authority or jurisdiction. What that means. But how many of us Africans living in America are autonomous? See, and I know this isn't about the individual, but the group. The group. See, this is where we have the greatest misunderstanding at. It's because we believe that somehow, because they were no longer willing to keep us as slaves, that somehow that meant we are now as equal to the American culture as the Europeans are. Let me ask you this. African culture, how much African culture comprises American culture? How much? That's what I know. I know this to be a fact. And when I come back, I want to talk about exactly what it means to be independent in America. Hey, this is your boy Tone Duncan. You are listening to Truth Seekrz on iHeart radio station IntellectualRadio.com. You guys check this out. Spread the word. If you like what I'm talking about, please like, comment, and share. We'll be right back. And when we're back, we're going to get into what it means to truly be independent as Black people in America. Talk to you in a second. This is your boy, Tone Duncan, and you are listening to Truth Seekers. We are on IntellectualRadio.com, and this is an iHeart station. I want to thank you so very much for tuning in. I want to thank you so much for giving me your attention on a day where there's a lot of food, there's a lot of friends, and there's a lot of family. And but while we're talking about food, I want to let you know about a particular company that I had an opportunity to meet, and I really like that they are trying to put healthy food into the stores, and it's a black-owned company, and the name of that company is Vegani Gourmet, Vegani Gourmet. And Vegani Gourmet can be found at Whole Foods. It's a vegan food, and a lot of you know that I am vegan, and I am vegan for a reason, you guys. This might not be the best time to tell you this, but when I got my plant-based education from Cornell University, the first thing I found out is that, unfortunately, we are dying from the amount of meat and the amount of processed foods. And we're dying because of the amount of salt at a rate that is alarming. Alarming. We'll talk about why we're dying from these foods at another time, because you guys know that we've had that conversation already. But I don't have a problem going back. Because if I can save one more person, then I know that one person will save somebody else. And together we've got to other. So here's the deal. All right. What is this whole Independence Day thing? First off, independence was decided by Congress to be celebrated on July 2nd. You know, it's a 13-year war. You know, I mean, this thing lasted. And, you know, we get the respect of being the first that died. You know, it was Crispus, African-American, who was killed. I can't call him an African-American, because at that time he was not considered an American. He was considered a Negro or something worse. But he got killed because what happened was the Brits and the Brits and the French had a huge territorial fight over America. And the Brits had a huge territorial fight. And the Brits had, you know, used so many resources, had put out so much of their resources that they said, hey, we did this for America, so it's on America to pay us back. And so they put all these heavy taxes on America. And America, those who were here, the colonists, said, that's it, man. I can't take this. We're not going to do this. This is evil. They said, we're being mistreated. We're not given the same respect of the Brits. We're getting beaten. We're getting killed in some instances. Being respected. We can't take this. We're willing to die rather than let Brits oppress us. You hear this word, oppress us. They're small in number. We're less than 13% of the British Empire. We can take it no more. And they waged a war. 13 years. I got fireworks, I believe, could be gunshots, going off behind me. So I like this. It's kind of festive. It makes me feel like I'm giving background sound for what I'm doing here. And so what happened was, they knew they didn't have enough resources. They said, we got to tell some lies to gain some friends. So they told their slaves Listen, fight with us, brothers, and we will give you your freedom when we get our own. You know, they told that to the Indians too. Now, mind you, they weren't the only song in town. There was somebody else singing too. That was the Brits. They said, hey, listen, we'll give you your freedom. So we had blacks on both sides. A black on black crime in America. Not to be compared to the black on black crime right now. But see, this was when it was wholly sanctioned. Because America became terrorists in their own empire's land. They decided we're going guerrilla by any means necessary. Fought the good fight. So on July 4th, believe it or not, it became more customary to celebrate the 4th of July because for some weird reason, it kept falling on the weekend. Sunday was God's day for the early colonists. There's no way they were going to celebrate Independence Day on God's day because you're glorifying the amount of murder of fellow Christian. So they had to make it a different day. Didn't matter if it was the very next day, but it became more common to celebrate it on the 4th. And then eventually the 4th became the day we celebrate independence in America. But remember is there was some key issues going on. Taxation without representation was a phrase they used because realize that every hatred, every division, every innate bigotry starts off as an economic ploy. See, once you are able to use and exploit somebody, you come up with a justification that you then mass market so that good law-abiding people, God-fearing people can rationalize the blatant mistreatment, even murder. See, and this is why they use the word oppressor. Because for them, any deliberate attempt to impede on the liberties, and freedom meant financial, economical. They freedom, they mean the freedom to worship their God the way they want to, the ability to create income the way they want to, the ability to celebrate their heritage, their culture the way they want to. See, that's freedom. The ability to put people in office that represent them specifically. That's freedom. And they were willing to die for it. How many of you realize that when you celebrate a George Washington, that's no different than celebrating Nat Turner? Celebrate George Washington, there's no difference between George Washington and Nat Turner, except for Nat Turner was celebrating the emancipation of blacks by any means necessary because there was absolutely no way. See, he was a preacher. Read the word, and the word said, let my people. But we can't celebrate our liberators in this country. And you know why? Because we're not truly independent. If we were independent, you could celebrate Nat Turner. You could celebrate Malcolm. You could celebrate those like Marcus Garvey. You could celebrate died fighting for the freedom of their people, unless you truly weren't free. And that's something to think about. Because when the colonists, it was time for a revolution, Gandhi, no, they didn't go hold hands. We shall overcome. See, this wasn't led by a pastor. This was led by an army of killers that were willing to die, liberty or death. But the question is, what happened to those proud Africans who stood side by side to fight the good fight? And you better believe we were fighting. Not a lot of information about the Africans who fought in the revolution. You get some, you get people who say, oh, that was just a darker picture. That wasn't really a black person in that picture with Washington, or blah, blah, blah. See, they'll try and give you the conspiracy joke and try and turn it like it's real. But the truth of the matter is, if you show that that was an African for the same freedom you're fighting for, then you're going to have to explain why he didn't get it. And we know why he didn't get it. It was never the intention of anyone to give away power. They don't do that. No one does that. The only time somebody gives away power somewhere else. Give you a perfect example. They needed a way to stabilize the Middle East. And they needed to make sure that they had an ally in the Middle East to buffer the potentiality. The Muslims in the north, what you call the Middle East, and the Africans who had fallen under Arab Muslim control in the south, they picked a group of people to come back to their homeland because Abraham was told by God that he would have a land flowing with milk and honey. Muslims would tell you they already had it. That's the children of Ishmael. But see, our Bible, it reads something different. And believe me, there's a lot of Bibles that read a lot of different things. So they put the Jewish state, the state of Israel, in the middle of a war zone and said, you know what? You want power? You want guns? We'll give you guns You want money? We'll give you money. But we want you to fight any and everybody that tries to consolidate those two areas because it's too much to deal with over here. Because we know have both those regions secure, European power will be crippled. Ask yourself why are still in America. And don't fool yourself to think they don't pay reparations. Do you know that the Brits took a massive loan from the Rothschilds to give reparations to the Caribbean slave? Yeah, that's right. Britain took out a loan from the Rothschilds. Oh, I know you're thinking, well, that was Britain, that wasn't America. Well, here's what America did. Under a political official named Marshall, after the World War, they gave money to the entire Western European, called the Marshall Plan. Billions. Why? Because when America pays reparations, what they're here is any infiltration into their supremacy and totalitarian rule. You have to understand this. See, they died with grave markers and they celebrated in multiple ways every year. Blacks have people who died too. But of all the blacks who died, which African in America actually made it to a federal holiday? It's holding hands. And what about Martin Luther King? They hurried up and got rid of him before he started to change his tune. Some of us remember when Martin Luther King, in a famous speech, said, "I feel I have led my people into a burning house." It wasn't very long before he randomly got killed. We know about getting killed by a so-called enemy. We've seen that with Kennedy. We've seen that with a lot of people. You guys, this is about reality. See, here's the deal. Very few times will you hear somebody talk to you about the truth. Hatred. See, I have no hatred for any person in America that doesn't have an overt, direct hatred for me or mine, because it doesn't help to hate people that are being exploited just like you. Just because they're being exploited, accommodations, doesn't mean they're not being exploited too. Yes, one of the greatest misunderstandings is how many European Americans are being exploited by the American government right now and getting killed with some accoutrements. But the reality is we destroyed, decimated with almost nothing to show. See, what we get are handouts. And I know a lot of you will say, well, only 24% of African Americans are in the poverty. Excuse me, is upward of 27% in some statistical analysis. 20%, 27%, less than 30%. There's 70% of Africans in America that are the poverty marker. But see, what you don't factor in is the amount of Americans that are not of African descent that are below the poverty marker. What percentage is that? See, that'll shock your mind. See, when we talk about independence, we're talking about having dialogue, having a meaningful position in the country that we call ours. Because a lot of you call America your country. This is your country. This is where you go to war. Some of you've got cousins, nephews, nieces, uncles, brothers, fathers, mothers that have died this country. And all you have left is the belief that it was not in vain. All you have left is the legacy of sacrifice. And I would never take that from you. But what I want you to know is those aren't the only fallen you have. Before you knew any of them, there were the ancestors who lost their lives so that you could have one with dignity, so that you could pick up the mantle, tall, and move this thing forward into true liberation, true emancipation. See, that's not nationalistic. That's not black over everything. Although Trump said America over everything. America over everything. Then that means the blacks, the Africans in America, have to, by law, get a greater piece of this pie. I know a lot of you think that somehow because we've had Barack Obama as a two-term president, that racism is no longer an issue in America. Well, I say you lost your minds. You haven't heard the consternation of those who opposed Barack Obama because he simply was not the one they grew up thinking would be the head of the realm, the head man on top. And if you decent white Americans can agree to anything, you have to agree that there was a strong contingent of European Americans hated Barack simply because he was black. And competence was something that was constantly brought up. Well, but he's not doing anything. Oh, I think he's a socialist. Socialist? Do I need to go back and talk to you guys about the federal offerings to the Europeans in America? Their economics? Return on investment. Investment means, without question, that I put money into a particular thing for profits that are expected to come. So when we talk about independence in America, and remember, this is the independence in America that was supposed to have happened in 1996. We have to take into consideration that possibly they were talking about a different independence. Maybe the independence they were referring to had more to do with the so-called Emancipation Proclamation. But that's because most of you don't read. If you read, you'd realize the Emancipation Proclamation had nothing to do with abolishing slavery. The slaves, and I use that word cautiously. It allowed those enslaved in the South to have nation to leave their oppressor, because the Emancipation Proclamation meant all those who were enslaved in a state that was against the Union. But we all know that the states that were with the Union had no such law. So maybe we're talking about the 13th or 14th Amendments that freed so-called African enslaved in America. Maybe we forget that the real argument that was going on at the time was not from the abolitionists. And mind you, the abolitionists were the Republican Party, which somehow now has all the races, and all the so-called abolitionists have switched over to the Democratic Party. But we'll talk about that at another time. Political science is something I love, and I love for you to know more about it as well. Understand that had nothing to do with people. That had something to do with corporations. See, it was corporations that had a real problem. What was the problem with the corporations? The problem was that they had the same rights as men. But what men? See, because according to the Constitution, there was the second man, the black man. What was he? 3/5 of a man. So these corporations, some would argue, were not white men. They were black men. So in order for the corporations to have the kind of political control to stop against the things that were happening at the time, do your history, work stoppages were a real issue. Strikes. Federal government demanding that people go back to work. And they said, no, that's unconstitutional. See, because I have the rights as a white man to say, I don't want to work for that 3/5 man corporation. Follow the money. Corporations then got the opportunity to defend that there was no such thing and created equal. And they got behind this, put some money in the abolitionists' mouths, and said, listen, I can't have this conversation. They're going to figure us out. But you stand up and you talk. Ask Abraham Lincoln whether or not he believed that Africans enslaved in America would ever or should ever equal to white Americans. All you have to do is read his arguments. Case, never the thought, never the plan. Actually, you know what Abraham Lincoln said? He said the only way to ever deal with the African problem in America is to have them recolonize South America or back to Africa. Anybody know about the amount of money that the United States gave for the relocation program back to Africa and Liberia? No. But it's cool. I just want you to understand that this is greater than just a celebration for the independence of the colonists. This is a wake-up call. Still think independence is being told what to do, given a little handout in America. It's not the case. Not the case at all. Not the case at all. See, when you truly become independent, you will start to utilize your income. You will stop being the #1 consumers in the world, though only creating 3% of the items consumed. You will start those funds. Businesses that represent your cause, who will then hire people who are affected by your plight. And then studying the systematic progressions of all those who have come to this country and climbed stratospherically to where they feel they have economic equality. See, because that's what equality is. It's not, it's economy. We've got to have our economics together. We've got to understand that you are not a citizen until you own land. Not in this country. Not the way that things are going here. What does it mean to be independent in America? You can guarantee your children will be represented with the same tenacity their children are represented in this country. It means you'll no longer have to wonder why we make up 13% of the population, have more prisoners in America than any other population in the world. See, that's when you know you're a citizen. That's when you can celebrate your independence. We as Africans in America need to take this day and really, really think about what it means to be independent in America. Deeply each one of you for taking your time and listening to me. My prayer, my hope, desire is that you like, comment, and share. I will be checking this out like I always do, and I will give you every opportunity in the world to give me your thoughts because I love to respond back with you. Until next week, this is your boy, Tone Duncan, and we are the Truth Seekers on IntellectualRadio.com, an iHeart station. For those of you who are listening on IntellectualRadio.com, I can't tell you, but you are going to be excited to know who's coming up next. I'll leave that as a secret. 8 o'clock, just right around the corner. See you next week.